が消えかかるそれがオレンジャー熱い血流れる鋼のマシン
Welcome to the Super Sentai Brothers. This is episode 43 of For Your Eyes Ohranger, the internet's best and only podcast dedicated to Chouriki Sentai Ohranger. Every week we watch an episode of the show and we share our thoughts with you, the listeners. My name is Matt J. With me as always is my co-host and brother Dave. Dave, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. Matt, does the script say Super Sentai Buddies? Is this... Oh, did you do a thing with Mark?
Oh, yeah. I will change that sometimes, but I only half read the script when I'm doing it.
I would hope at this point you're not really tied down to that one.
Hey, man, listen, sometimes it is a challenge to remember all of the words. But no, yes, it does say the Super Sentai Buddies, but that's not what we're doing today, Dave. I mean, we are buddies.
We are. Yes, definitely. That is totally true.
But also brothers, and that's what we're doing today. As aforementioned, episode 43 of Chouriki Sentai Ohranger, it is called The Trump Card is 7 Changes. Which is a weird title for a TV show.
Yeah, it is. This falls into the rare category of the title doesn't seem to really be connected to anything at all. There's like a real... I'm assuming that this is some sort of pun in Japanese, because otherwise, they make one super oblique reference, and otherwise, this title makes no sense to me.
Yeah, it's very often the title will either make perfect sense or be a complete lie. This is neither of those, but we're just going to have to roll with that, Dave. But we will get to that once we get to the actual episode. But before we get to the episode, Dave, of course, shining in the heavens, there are 5 stars. What is our first star of the week?
So our first star of the week, Matt, is this upcoming weekend is homecoming for our school. And the high school at which I teach. And as is my custom, I won't be engaging with it at all.
Sounds like a good call.
Yeah. Well, there's always a call for hey, staff, if you could come chaperone the dance on Friday night. But nobody ever sends out another email that says, this is how much we will pay you to chaperone the dance. So really what they're asking is, hey, do you want to spend 4 hours at a high school dance for kicks? And the answer to that is no. No, right. I do not.
Have you been really looking forward to going to the high school dance all year? I know you're 35, but maybe you're into it anyway.
Yeah, man. Actually, when you put it like that, definitely nobody should be chaperoning. That makes it sound very bad.
Right. If you're not getting paid to go to the high school dance and you're not in high school, then it's weird.
Then it's definitely weird. So it's been Spirit Week all week, and kids are getting super torqued up about it's the homecoming dance, right? And sure. I tell kids, I try not to be too much of a spoil sport for high school kids. But man, they're getting real jacked about this thing, and it's all I can do to just say guys, it does not matter. It doesn't matter at all. If you want to go.
Sure,
have a good time.
Absolutely.
Definitely go and have a good time. But you're investing this with a lot of meaning, and it's just not there. I was talking to some kids, and I'm like, man, the last time I thought about a high school dance? I can tell you when the last time it was. It was this time last year when I was telling another group of kids they did not need to care about their high school dance.
I mean, yeah, again, if that's what you're into, go for it. But high schoolers have this thing where they impart meaning to every single part of their life, because nothing that has happened in their life so far actually has meaning yet. So they're just attaching meaning to everything and hoping that it sticks at some point.
Yeah, well, and eventually it does. There are a handful of things that you'll do in your life that really mean something. But guys, I promise, like getting down in your new dress for like 4 hours on a Friday afternoon at the age of 15, it's just not one of them. Like, it's just not. If you're listening to this podcast as a 15-year-old, like, let me give you the gift of that freedom. You won't listen to me. Like, let me just say, I've given advice to a lot of high schoolers, and this is what I've learned. I'm giving them advice for my sake.
Right.
And for, like, my own, like, low-key comedic value later, and also for them, so that in, like, 6 years, and I say this, I'm like, listen, you're not going to listen to me, but in 6 years, you're going to remember this conversation, and you're going to be like, oh, man, Mr. J was really right. And then maybe you'll listen to some of the other advice that I've given you, and like that won't be too late. There's like a buffer of advice you have to get through.
Sure, of course.
As a high school kid. So yeah, that's the homecoming story. Is I didn't go to homecoming.
Yeah. Man, it's crazy how much I think a high schooler's experience could be improved with like just a dash of like nihilism.
Like, yeah, like not too much.
Like not a lot. You don't want to go too deep into that.
Yeah, you can drink too deeply from that well real easily.
Oh, so deeply, so quickly.
Like especially as a high school student.
But if
you just want like a soupçon of nihilism.
Just sprinkle it on. Like add to taste, you know.
It's like a dusting. That's how much you need.
Right.
So Matt, what is our, and let me just say, by the way, I did go to dances in high school and had a very good time. Like, they were fun, but, that's all they were. So, Matt, what is our second star of the week?
Dave's second star of the week is that my hair was getting a little shaggy, so I decided that it was time to call up the haircutting place that I go to make an appointment with the woman who cuts my hair.
Now, you know this person from something else, right?
I know her from a previous place where she cut hair. I followed her to this job from her previous place because, like, she does a good job with my hair. And I only get my hair cut, like, every, 2 months or so. Like, I'm not one of those people who get their haircut all the time. And so when I do get it cut, I like to have somebody that I know and trust to do it. So once I found somebody who I decided, like, yes, this is a person who does a good job with my hair, I'm just going to go to her forever. Like, I just locked myself in. So, like, when she left her previous place, I followed her.
You just, like, found out where she was going and then made...
Well, she had sent out, like, a text message. Like, hey...
Oh, no way.
Yeah,
nope, that's a great idea.
Yeah, like, to the people who were her regulars, like, she sent out a message like, hey, I'm leaving. If you want to follow me, like, this is where you can make an appointment. So you did that. Yeah, so I did that. And that was a couple of years ago. Maybe a year and a half ago. So I needed a new haircut, and so I called the place up and I said, hey, I need to make an appointment with such and such a person. And the person on the other end of the line says, oh, they don't work here anymore. And I said...
And you said, oh, no.
Well, what I said was, oh, okay, well, maybe I'll call you back in a minute. And then I hung up, and then I said, oh, no, what am I going to do?
No, wait, I mean, like, do you have this person's contact information?
Well, so she had texted me before, right? Like, when she had moved
But, like,
job.
years ago.
But I didn't, like, that text is still in my phone somewhere, but I didn't, like, set her as a contact that I could look up. And so I just spent, like, an hour scrolling through my old texts, trying to find her number, and I couldn't do it. And I was getting, like, kind of, not like panicky, but just wondering like, oh my gosh, like, am I gonna have to like start from scratch and try to find a new hair person? And then I remembered, Dave, that I know someone else who gets their hair cut by the same person.
Oh, okay. So you've got a hair person network at this point.
Right. So I texted that person and I was like, hey, do you have our like hair cutter's number? And they said yes. And so I, like, found out the new place she was working. I called there. I texted her, like, my hairdresser's number. Like, hey, I don't know if you, like, remember giving me your contact information, but I'm texting you now because, like, good Lord, I need a haircut and I cannot go to anybody else. Or at least not without some sort of recommendation. Like, please help me. Where are you? Did you leave the state? Please tell me you didn't. And it turns out that she did not. She's just like in a part of town that is like not very far away from where I am. So I was
see,
able to
fantastic.
go. Yeah. So I just like set up an appointment for the next week, and I went in, and it was great. There wasn't like a huge scoop or anything. There wasn't like any hot gosses as to why she left. It was just very panicky for me for an afternoon.
No, listen. We are, I think we are on record as being big advocates of having people for things.
Yeah.
So, listen, if you have found a person for a thing...
Yeah, don't give up on that precious gift.
Yeah, just don't give up, man. You gotta, yes, definitely. Anyway,
Dave, what is our third star of the week?
So, Matt, our third star of the week, this is a very short life pro tip.
Okay.
Yeah, now and let me be clear, this is something I actually consider a life pro tip, because I feel like 95% of the life pro tip, like quote unquote life pro tips that you see are things that are like just simply very obviously good ideas. Like,
right, like
hey,
don't forget to drink water and get to bed at a reasonable time.
Right, like that's not a life pro tip. That's
hacks.
just life. Right, that's not like a life pro tip needs to be something that like is a very, very good idea and I maybe would have never thought of before and is like a small, subtle thing that will definitely make your life better. Like that's a life pro tip. So here's the new life pro tip, Matt.
Okay.
First of all, this life pro tip assumes that you drink cream in your coffee.
Sure.
Which if you don't, like, what are you even doing with your life?
Just skip ahead for a minute, you know.
Yeah, just
Don't
I
be a
guess just
fourth
skip
star.
ahead for a minute, but also drink cream in your coffee. It's so much better.
I mean, that depends
Like,
on the
and I know-
coffee, honestly. But
Yeah, okay, now listen. I know if you're like a real coffee person that like the cream dilutes the flavor or something. I'm not that guy. I like cream in my coffee. Also, can I say if you drink almond milk in your coffee, first of all, if you just like the flavor of almond, like rock it out. Like I like almond milk. I don't drink it instead of milk. I just like almond milk. But if you're putting almond milk in your coffee, it doesn't do the same thing as creamer. Like it changes the color of it. Like that's what almond milk does for your coffee. It just makes it like visibly lighter. But there's no fat in it. Like there's chemical things that you need the fat for. It's not happening. Anyways, none of this is the life pro tip. I'm just like talking about almond milk. So here's the life pro tip. If you put half and half in your coffee or heavy cream, which is what I do, don't stir it. Okay? Don't stir it into the coffee. Like just pour it in and it's going to sort of like float on, like some of it's going to mix in, but some of it's going to float on top. And so the first like 5 or 6 drinks of this coffee are going to be this like really wonderful, creamy sort of coffee. And then like as you are getting down into the cup, the coffee itself is getting a little bit stronger. And so you're sort of easing yourself into... This also is good if you're drinking your coffee like very early in the morning, which is what I do. You're sort of like easing yourself into this experience.
okay,
I just discovered this a few days ago inadvertently, and it's excellent. And then I told my wife, and she said, "Oh yeah." And I said, "Wait, have you known this whole time?" And she said, "Well, I just kind of thought everybody knew that." And I said, No, that's not a thing that I knew." Which I guess I can forgive her for, but yeah, that life pro tip, like don't stir the cream into your coffee.
Here's another life pro tip. Do the exact opposite, which is what I do, which is I put the cream in first and then I pour the coffee on top. Which is, I think, better because...
Okay, now, well, dig into this experience for me, Matt, because, like, I've just discovered this new thing, and, like, I'm pretty gung-ho about it, so...
listen, that sounds delightful, but it sounds delightful in a way that is dissimilar from how I like to drink my coffee, which is that...
okay.
Like, I just like to have a uniform... Like, if I'm just drinking a cup of coffee, like, I like to have a uniform experience with it. If I'm doing something like a little fancier, that's different. But the thing about pouring the coffee into the cream as opposed to pouring the cream into the coffee, and it's the same way if you're doing tea, like if you put milk in your tea, is that when you pour the hot liquid into the cold liquid, then the cold liquid warms up more gradually. But when you pour the cold liquid into the hot liquid, then the cold liquid is shocked to the heat of the hot liquid, which means that if you pour cold cream into hot coffee, that is where you will have the possibility of the cream curdling. And you get like the little like curdly bits on top. Whereas if you do it the other way with an even pour, you avoid that entirely, and you get to have it all mixed into your drink all at the beginning without having to either dirty a spoon or waste a coffee stir.
Oh, okay. That also sounds like a very good idea. I think I'm going to stick with my thing for now, but I will try that in the future.
All right.
What, Matt, is our fourth weird... I feel like we're digging... Listen, I think we're doing good work here. Let me just say that before I say the thing I'm about to say. I'm thoroughly enjoying this conversation with you, my brother. I do feel like we are digging pretty deep on like very, very mundane things to talk about for the star. Like star 1, I didn't go do a thing. Star 2, you cut your hair. Star 3, cream in your coffee. So,
Sure.
What's star 4, Matt? Did you drink water today and breathe oxygen? I don't know.
Dave, the 4th star today is that I went for a nice long walk and came back and drank a refreshing can of seltzer water. No,
You know
I mean,
what?
I did do that, but that's not the star. We can talk about it. I went to the store and I bought some decorative gourds and some Indian corn. But that is not the star, Dave.
I also have decorative gourds on my kitchen table.
Yeah, man. I got a little chilly, and I wanted to be happy about that, so I bought gourds.
Yep.
But the 4th star today...
Fall's the best.
4th star is balloon animals.
Love balloon animals.
Yeah. Now, listener, you may or may not know this, but Dave and I both, in our sort of high school days, learned to juggle and make balloon animals.
Mm-hmm.
This is not something that comes up in daily life too often. Like... if you know how to play the guitar, then, like, maybe you're in a band, or, like, maybe you just noodle around with the guitar in your apartment. But, like...
I was going to say, like, guitars exist in the world.
Right. If you know how to make balloon animals, there are people in my life who have no idea that I know how to make balloon animals, even though I have known how to make balloon animals much longer than I've known those people. But I was out at the bar the other day, and I was sitting outside on the back patio. This was before it got chilly out. And a guy rolled through with a backpack full of like a bag of balloons and a balloon pump and was like, "Hey, do you guys want balloon animals?" And I was like, "I don't want you to make them, but give me some balloons and I will make some balloon animals," because I got very excited to show off my stupid balloon skills.
Now, is this guy doing this for like tips? Is he selling them? Like, what's...
He was accepting tips, but he was not like saying, "Give me $1 and I will give you a balloon."
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
He was very sort of inviting and cool about the fact that not everybody wanted to pay him for these balloons. And so, like, I was just like, he was making like, you know, giant hats and stuff for people. And I was like sitting at this table, like fiddling with a balloon, like, no, like that's, you don't want to do the flashy thing here. Let me show you how to make a parrot. Like, it's got a couple of involved steps, but it's not that tough. And also, if you're doing a sword, you've got to put a tulip twist in the hilt. And I was talking to all of the other people around me, and none of those people cared, because it's balloon animals. And it's fun, but it's not like this sort of thing that, like, a group of people is going to be like, "Oh my gosh, Matt, like, I never knew you had this hidden talent." There was like maybe 10 seconds of like, "Oh, do you know how to do that?" Yeah. Okay, cool. And then they went back to their conversation while I was like trying to remember like how long to leave the various segments to really get a satisfying snail.
It's a surprisingly long chunk. Like you really need, it's a little bit weird. Also, I push the snail a lot, and I feel like nobody ever wants it, even though snail is like very obviously the best balloon animal. It's adorable.
Snail is very good. I also like making the ram, although that one is always a little tricky.
Oh yeah, the horns are a real pain because you've got like a bunch of really tiny little twists.
Yeah. Anyway, I am sure that our listeners have the exact same feeling that the people sitting at the table did, which was like, "Okay, I get it. You're talking about balloon animals. Will you please move on?" And we will. That's all. I just wanted to tell you about that afternoon. But it was very fun, and it reminded me how much I liked making balloon animals.
I do. Listen, it's a lot of fun. Also, like, the internet is real good for this, because I was actually doing balloon animals a little while ago for, like, a little street fair thing, like, in our neighborhood. And I was like, I'll do balloon animals. That'll be fun. And so I was doing it, and I was, like, looking up some stuff, just to kind of refresh. And I did not know how mediocre I was at balloon animals. Like, I thought I was actually pretty decent. And the answer is no. I'm, like, very mediocre.
Right. Like, we are not beginners.
Oh, yeah. Like, no, I know how to do balloon animals. Like, it is a thing that I can do. But, like, people get buck wild with these. And let me just say, when I say buck wild, I don't mean, like, the dude who built, like, an Iron Man suit out of balloons, or, like, the whole, like, bag end out of balloons. That is impressive in the sense that, like, it took 1,000,000 years to do. But that guy's not actually doing anything particularly interesting as far as, like, balloon artistry. Does that make sense? Like, he's got a ton of balloons, and it took a really long time, but, like, it's all just, like, very basic stuff. But if you look up balloon animals, like I said, people get nutty. It's very, very impressive. I love it. Anyways, Matt, what is our 5th star of the week?
Dave, our 5th star of the week is that I was sitting at my desk at work the other day, and for some reason, and I don't remember why, for some reason, it popped into my head that it had maybe been, I don't know, 15, 18 years since the last time I had played Scorched Earth, the mother of all games.
It's been a long time since I played it, although I do think about it, like, I don't know, not all the time, but it's not infrequent.
It's never that far from my mind. Now, listeners, if you are not in your 30s or 40s or above, you will not remember Scorched Earth, the mother of all games, I suspect. But it was a game, if you were familiar with the Worms games, Scorched Earth was sort of the prototype of that. It was like very early 90s. It was a DOS game. It was like a tank combat thing where you had different weapons and that sort of stuff. It's not super complicated, but, like, looking at a picture of it now or, like, seeing it played, like, immediately teleports me back in time in a way that very few other things do. Like, even old Nintendo games, I think, don't transport me that strongly because I have continued to play those Nintendo games.
Right, but, like, Scorched Earth, like, I played it a whole lot for a period of time and then kind of stopped. So...
yeah. So, all of this is to say is that I found a website that not only, like, has a in-browser emulator for Scorched Earth, the mother of all games, but it also just has, like, a huge repository of other DOS games. This website is called Classic Reload, and it just has, like, dozens, maybe hundreds of old DOS games. Let me just tell you some that I have looked up that I know are on here. I know we got our Quests for Glory, multiple Quests for Glory. We got Scorched Earth, the mother of all games. We've got a handful of Commander Keens. We have Duke Nukem 2. You got Halloween Harry, if you remember Halloween Harry. You might have known it as Jetpack Harry, but I think it was more classically known as Halloween Harry, but it was the same game. There's just, like, a ton of old stuff on this thing. And, like, a lot of old DOS games might not be fun if you didn't play them in the early 90s. But, like, there is something very specific about an old DOS game that I find really delightful. And, like, some of these, I had not even... not only had I not seen them, I had not thought about them in decades. There is a game in here called Ken's Labyrinth, which I only ever played the first, like, half hour of on a shareware, like, CD-ROM that our grandfather had, and I found the game to be confusing and unplayable, but there was one bit of that game that has stuck with me forever, which is that when you tried to use an item in a place where that item was not supposed to be used, there would be a guy's voice who would just say, "Save it for later." And every time I ever hear the words save it for later, I think about being in Ken's Labyrinth and trying to throw a red ball at something and not being allowed to. So if you want to relive that sort of weird specific experience, classicreload.com. A lot of good stuff.
Ooh, wait, Matt, before we finish, do they have Skull? Do they have Skull on that game? Or on that site? Yes?
Skull. Oh, I know what you were thinking of. You were thinking of the game Skullduggery. I had trouble finding that game for years because I kept looking for it as Skull. Because I think that's what, I think when you went to start the game, you had to, run the file skull.exe. And so I always assumed that the game was named Skull. It's called Skullduggery, and I actually don't see it on here. But
no kidding. That's a bummer. That game was super creepy.
Yeah, Skullduggery was one of those, how do you describe it? It's sort of like a Zork.
Yeah, you're wandering around on a map that's made out of ASCII characters, and I could never figure out anything to do. I would just wander around and then get eaten by a grue, effectively.
Yeah, it was... The writing in that game was both creepy and evocative, but it's not in here, but I think I have seen it in other websites like this, if you were to poke around for it. Anyway,
yeah, I'm sure it's around someplace. Anyways,
it has a game called Skull Quest. It has another game called Skull Quest 2, The Vortex, but I've never played any of those games. Anyway, speaking of things that I have done, I've already watched this episode of Sentai, Dave, but we're going to take a break, and when we get back, we are going to watch The Trump Card is 7 Changes. It was written by Shouzao Urahara. I'm probably mispronouncing that in 3 different ways. But if you want to watch it with us, you can get it on the DVDs, or you can watch it on shoutfactory.tv. And we will be right back. Okay, welcome back to this sort of episode that I wish we would have gotten a lot more of this season.
Yeah, I mean, anytime we're not getting this kind of episode... Well, okay, there's 2 really good versions of the Sentai episode, right?
I mean, not just in this season, but across the board, Sentai is at its best when it's either this...
Which is buck wild.
Yeah, or when it is, like a lot of Jetman was, really, legitimately emotionally connecting and, making you care about the characters and the stories.
Yeah, and we have gotten, I feel like we've gotten some of that in Jetman, but a lot of, not as much of it as I would have liked. But they are coming through in spades, I think, coming in near the end here. These couple episodes have been really, really cool.
Yeah, man, Jetman was so good with the emotional stuff, and also had a lot of the goofy stuff in it, but the emotional stuff is really where Jetman was strong. Mm-hmm. And Kakuranger had some emotional stuff, but really it's off the wall weirdo episodes were genuinely amazing.
Yeah.
Die Ranger, I think, was a great balance between those two.
Yeah, I totally agree. There was there was a ton of stuff with Shoji and with Ryo. It's yeah.
Oh, if you think the last we're going to mention Shoji this episode, you are wrong.
You're very wrong.
But this Ohranger, I feel like, has had some of each, but there's also been a good number of episodes where it had neither.
Yeah, well, it was fun, and maybe we got some stuff, but it wasn't just a blown away episode.
Yeah, there's always something.
Right, but this episode is really, really good. So let's just get into it.
It is, in its way, the third part of a trilogy.
Yeah,
which I didn't realize until halfway through the episode. Okay, well let's just get into this.
So the episode starts, we see some high school, it's a high school girls track team is what I assume they are. And they're jogging along saying fight, fight, fight. It's they're a sports ladies. And they pass by and sort of around this older woman.
I mean,
she's not old. She's, I don't know, man, late 30s, something like that. But she's got a bunch of groceries and she's sort of having trouble carrying them. And what is clearly a bar machine in disguise compliments her.
Oh, yeah. I have it in my notes that this is the sort of character who you could tell from a mile away is going to harass a strange woman on the street.
Mm-hmm. So he's got a fedora, And he's got like a very wide belt and checkered pants and like a tank top, and then he's wearing like a sport jacket kind of over his shoulders. Is that? And
yes.
and flip-flops. And he's wearing flip-flops for some reason. So, but he compliments her. He's like, lady, you really seem really dedicated to your family. That's very cool of you. Great job.
But hey, real quick.
But hey,
do you hate the idea of happiness? Which is a weird thing to say to anyone. Which is a weird thing to especially a stranger.
But it does get her attention, so I guess it's a good cold open. And she turns around and he says, listen, wouldn't you love to be like young again? And she's immediately interested. So she kind of rushes over and he's like, listen, this crystal ball, I've got it. And it's a crystal ball of like wishing truth or something.
It's of youth specifically.
Of youth, yeah. And it will make you young again. And so she's real excited for a second. And then she turns away. She's like, no, this is ridiculous.
Right.
Like, this is obviously a scam. Like, that's not how the universe works. You're clearly lying to me. And then the dude says, well, hey, don't walk away. Women's happiness is in their youth and beauty, which is a terrible thing. I mean, I guess he is a villain. So, yes. Okay.
Yeah, do not take your lessons from this man. This monster man from space.
But that is enough. That's enough. She's like, oh, okay, fine. Like, how much is it? And he says, 500 yen.
And you will note, this is not the only time that the Baranoia Empire has sold a, like, magical trinket to someone for 500 yen. Like, when they were selling the beckoning dog, that was also 500 yen. I think that is just, like, the standard going rate for Baranoia curses.
Maybe? I don't know how much 500... That's like $5, right?
Well, okay. I've told you the story before about how when I was living in France and I went to the deli to go get meat, I would just always ask for 200 grams because that was a number that I could remember how to say.
Uh-huh.
I think it might be like that. Like, they just never really learned the conversion for currency. And so, like, I don't know. Here's the thing I read. 500 yen.
Yeah, sure. 500 yen. That sounds like a good... Yeah. So he says 500 yen. She says, you know what? Yeah, like, I'll go for it. So she gets home, and she's kind of excited. She's like, she puts all of her stuff down, and she says, oh, man, I remember when I was like a schoolgirl. And she goes and she pulls out a photo album of herself in high school. And she's like, those were the days. Lady, let me tell you, as a dude who regularly interacts with high schoolers, I would rather die 1,000 deaths than go back to high school.
That is one of the crazy things is like, man, you could go back to your youth. And she does not think, cool, I would like to be, I don't know, 25. She thinks, man, 14 sounds great.
Like, that was the jam. So she like flips the thing on and there's voice instruct, like it glows.
Clearly robotic voice instructions.
Yeah, and it just says, here's what you do. Clap your hands, put it down, clap your hands 3 times, and then pray for your wish. And it works.
Well,
kind of.
It certainly does something.
It certainly does something. So here's what happens. Her kid gets home, and he is greeted by this very adult woman, but she is dressed like a schoolgirl. Yes. And she does not, first of all, seem to register that she is very clearly in like an adult body, and also does not recognize her son.
Yes, which is very traumatizing for this child.
Oh, yeah. He's very, very bothered. Although he does fairly well with it for a reason I think we'll understand a little bit later.
Yeah. I think you and I maybe came to this conclusion at the same time, about halfway through the episode, but we will get there.
I'll tell you when I realized it. So her kid is chasing her, but she kind of gets away from him. Just, I don't know, she's like got adult legs. Whatever. The point is she's not there. And he runs into the Ohrangers, who he knows, because like all children know the Ohrangers, apparently.
Of course.
So they sort of pull up. It's Goro, and he's like, "Hey, Yutaka, right? Yeah, Yutaka. He says, hey, Yutaka, like, what's going on? He's like, man, I don't even know. My mom was dressed as a little girl, and she did not recognize me. Like, I have no idea what's going on, and now I can't even find her. And then the rest of the Rangers are there.
Yeah.
And, like, they show up at this point.
Yeah, and also, what was his name? Yutaka? I did not write it down.
Yutaka, yeah.
Yutaka's sister is also there.
Right.
And he's like, hey, have you seen Mom? The weirdest thing is happening. And she says, no, I don't. And then all of them, the Rangers and these two siblings, overhear this same, like, sleazeball, like, trinket salesman sort of in a courtyard next to him selling junk to a small crowd. He has some stuff, like, laid out on a blanket.
So he says, like, I've got these crystal balls, and they are very good for, like, any number of things. And I didn't quite follow his pattern, because, like, it just didn't seem to make sense. But I do know that he very definitely mentioned the Prophet of Islam in his sales pitch somewhere.
Yeah, he also said something about becoming a monk. I don't know what he was talking about. I thought about rewinding it, and then I decided, you know what? Like, that's fine. I don't need to get more info on this.
It was very, very strange. But he sees the Rangers kind of over his shoulder and says, like, oh, no, like, we're done. Like, I gotta go. Which is, like, about the most suspicious thing you can do, right? Like, if you're doing something bad and you see the cops, don't immediately and abruptly stop whatever you're doing and try and walk away. Like, it's guaranteed. It's guaranteed to make someone follow you.
Especially if they're the superhero cops.
Right. So but like the crowd sort of is disappointed and they leave. And the Rangers kind of stroll over and they notice something. They're trying to figure out what's going on. They're like, well, I don't know. Like, the dude seemed to leave. It was a little bit weird, but whatever. And then I think it's Momo looks down and she sees that there are like really deep footprints in the sandy courtyard that they're standing in.
Yeah, they're sunk like a couple of inches in. And she's like, wait a second. And they're square.
Yeah, so she says,
like, these footprints are way too deep. That is way too heavy to be a real person. It must be a giant robot in disguise.
Yeah.
Which is crazy, because that means that it's actually just like a visual disguise, and he hasn't transformed into something smaller and lighter. Like, he is actually carrying all of that weight in his, like, weird, scummy human body.
Yeah, it was a very weird... Okay, well, we will find out in a minute that this dude does have, like, hypnotic powers, so it could dig the idea that he's just masterminding everybody.
Mastermind like the X-Men villain, not like the board game that's like a codebreaker thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Although I do like that board game very much.
It's a fun game.
But it leaves as many questions unanswered as it does answered. And I don't actually think that is the case. And I'm going to explain why in a second. So they follow him and they're like, hey, like, you're clearly a monster. And he's like, you got me. And then he sort of kicks his foot and he, like, throws his sandal at the Rangers. And they dodge it, but it hits a wall, like a cinder block wall, and knocks it over. Like, knocks a big hole in it. So I think what has happened is that he is not actually carrying around all his giant machine weight in his human transformed body. I think he is wearing, like, the weighted sandals is the idea.
Oh,
because as soon as he kicks them off, he immediately does like a super high flip kick thing, like over the Rangers.
Oh yeah, this guy's flips and kicks are extremely good.
Well, okay, so then we get something that I don't feel like we get enough of. Is just a straight person-on-person martial arts fight. Yeah,
Goro rolls up on this dude and starts to try to fight him, and this guy, who we will soon discover is Barra Fraud.
Yeah.
Barra Fraud is just like doing flips and like very cool kicks. I don't know how to really describe it, but
it just turns out that Barra Fraud is a really good martial artist. Like, good enough that he does not seem to be relying on like a lot of like his weird paranoia powers. Like, he just seems to be fighting Goro, and it's going pretty well. But he does then transform, and this is the one thing that's a little bit weird for me about this episode. I do not get this dude's look at all. Like, I have no idea what they're going for.
Yeah, I mean, the one element that sort of carries over is that when he's in his human form, he's got this fedora on because he's a scumball. And then when he transforms into Barafraud, he has like a robot fedora on.
Yeah.
But the rest of his look seems very much just like a sort of a hodgepodge of ideas of what a robot might look like. And not like a robot man, like definitely like a weird robot monster where the head and torso are just like one big lump, you know?
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm looking at I went and I'm looking at the concept art, and it looks like his head is supposed to, like his head and chest, he's just got like a giant head. And then the rest of him is just kind of, I don't know, man, just kind of machiney in general. Like he doesn't have a cohesive theme, it doesn't seem like.
Yeah, it's kind of the one thing about this episode that isn't excellent, because the rest of this episode is excellent.
Yeah. So he launches, like he's got like a thing on his forehead, and he launches this like spherical energy attack at the Rangers. And I think who does he get? He gets Goro, Momo, and Yuji, sorry.
Yeah.
And he like the energy coalesces around them into crystal balls, and then he pills out a crystal ball. And they're like trying to get out, and Goro uses his King Smasher from the inside. It doesn't work.
Actually, what's really cool is that he's using the King Smasher from the inside, but it's like reflecting around the interior of this crystal ball that he's stuck in.
Oh, that's right.
So then Barafraud has this fourth crystal ball, and he's using it as sort of like a remote control.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it.
To like affect various things that are happening in the other three. So like he flips them upside down, and he puts them in like an energy tornado, and then there's fire everywhere, and they cannot get out.
Yeah. So things are going very, very badly for our heroes. But just as it's about to kind of be the end, Shohei and Juri show up.
Yeah.
And they like blast the crystal ball that's in his hand, and that destroys the ones that the other Rangers are trapped in. So they get down, and they like go to attack him, but Barafraud has already run away.
Yeah.
So
it was a very fun fight. This sort of thing that is like cool in a way that we don't often get to see in this season, where like the monster, when he's doing a fight, isn't just fighting. He's got like tricks. You know, like he doesn't quite send people to another dimension, but it's very close.
Yeah, he does. It's a really cool fight. He's a very cool monster.
Yeah.
So the next thing we see, and Matt, is this where you noticed?
So we head back to the house where like the mother and the son and the daughter were before, and we see the father has arrived home, and we immediately recognize this father as a character we have seen in 2 other episodes. And then who this family is really starts to sink in for me.
So who this family is, Matt, it's the same family. They've been in like 2 other episodes.
Yeah, they were in the episode with the monster that would like cover everything in molds to destroy all the food in the city.
Yeah. Well, like he was super hungry and he ate all the time. And then the more he ate, he would shoot out like mold dust and like destroy everybody else's food.
Yes.
And so the plan there was to just like starve out Earth, I think.
Yeah.
And then he was also in with
the family was also in the other episode with Barra Fawcett, the guy.
That's what it was, yeah.
Like he turned into liquid metal, and he also installed faucets in people's houses that put out like green colored like diet water that did something.
Yeah. And then the plan there, I think, is that everyone was going to become super hungry. A lot of food stuff has happened to these people.
Yeah.
So he shows up. And it's the dad, ultimately, that I recognized.
Yes, me too. And then once I recognized him, I realized, oh gosh, of course, I've seen these people before.
Of course, this is the same family. So, but the crystal ball is like still active in the house. So I guess all that has to happen is that you have to turn it on like one time, and then kind of anybody who gets in the radius is getting regressed.
Right.
Because we know this because the dad walks out and he is dressed as like a schoolboy. And then the mom shows up and she's trying to get back. And I don't know what these adult children think their school schedule is, because they're just kind of like coming and going to school at like random times.
Yeah. But
and then
we go into the
I think
house.
maybe my favorite episode. No. We get maybe my favorite moment of this entire episode, which is the lady who is an adult is like trying to get past him. Get past the Rangers into her house, and she calls Yuji an old man, and he gets real salty about it.
Yes, because Yuji is like probably the youngest of the Ohrangers. Maybe Mobo is, but like,
yeah,
he's maybe like 21.
So they get inside the house, and Yutaka, I think, finds his older sister, and she has been regressed to like baby age.
Yeah.
So it's not really clear. Do you have to like wish for this, or does it just like knock off a number of years?
So I think,
and if so, how many?
Okay, so we are going to discover that this crystal ball thing, it's not specifically for de-aging. It is just like a general hypnosis machine that like zaps you with whatever wish you put into it. So I think that since the mother wished to be younger, then like that is what is locked into the machine. So everyone who gets near it gets zapped and acts as though they are younger than they am. Than they are, rather.
Okay.
So the parents get regressed to school age, but like the daughter obviously is younger, so she gets regressed about as far as she can into like baby mind.
Yes. So the kid Yutaka obviously flips out about this.
Yeah, he's not having a great day.
Right, and then Goro comes in and he sees that and he's like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe this is happening. And then we hear Yuji still yelling about being called old kind of in the background. And then Goro, I think it's Yuji actually, just turns the switch off on the crystal ball.
Yeah, like there's a big obvious like knob on it and he just turns it off. And then everyone is like, oh gosh, why am I dressed this way? This is weird.
Now, it doesn't seem to affect... What's weird is that it did affect the dad. It did affect the sister. Kind of just, it seems like as soon as they got in radius, but the Rangers were okay. I guess we just have to assume that they're, like, strong-willed?
Yeah, they are of strong will. And we have seen the boy a few in these other episodes, and we know that he is of a stronger will than the rest of his family.
Yes.
Because he has always managed to, like, avoid getting sucked into whatever craziness has happened. And, okay, thinking about the fact that this is the same family, the fact that that woman bought the crystal ball was even, like, more wild to me.
More insane, but it does explain to me a little bit why Yutaka was, like, relatively cool and, like, level-headed about this whole thing happening. Just because you're just like, well, I've been at this point.
Right. He people who have that it was going to happen to his family a third time.
Yeah, and okay, here is the list of people who have fought Baranoia monsters in order of like how many they've fought: the Rangers / the Chief, Ricky, this kid,
and then maybe Doran.
So, and as far as like direct conflict goes, I think this kid beats out Doran.
Oh yeah, I mean Doran is sworn to peace, but
yeah, okay, that's a very good point.
But this kid has definitely helped the Rangers 3 times, and I'm pretty sure that's at least a tie with Doran.
Yeah, so they turn the crystal ball off. Everybody's back to normal. Great, good job, everybody. So we go back to the base, and they've got the crystal ball, and the chief is there, and he's sort of examining it. And he says, okay, here's the deal. So we're back at the base, and the chief has got the crystal ball. He's sort of examining it. And he says, okay, here's the deal. This thing emits hypnotic rays that make you forget about reality.
Yes. This apparently...
Like, wow.
This is a dream of all humanity. All people have a secret hidden desire to just escape reality, and that is what Baranoia is preying on, which is a grim view of reality.
It is,
humanity,
and as a dude who just got back from a LARP weekend last weekend, I feel kind of personally attacked, Chief. So why don't you take your opinions and shove them?
Okay, so the chief says, listen, I know what we can do to deal with this. I have some equipment for you. And he pulls out a series of briefcases. Now, if you will recall to our previous episode, when the power bracers were dropped by the Ohrangers and then later returned to them near the end of the episode, they were in basically this exact same briefcase. And he has a pile of these briefcases that he's passing out. And so I think, oh yeah, new powerful gear, it's time.
And, I think that from the look on their face, I think the Rangers think that too. You're wrong and they're wrong.
But ultimately, I'm not disappointed.
Yeah, no. So, the next thing we see...
The chief has just dug into his disguise trunk and come up with a couple of fun outfits.
So the next thing we see is Yuji and Jori. And they are sitting at the waterside. I think actually where we first saw Bara Fraud.
Yes.
And they are just dressed in like a matching sweaters, and they've got glasses on.
They just look sort of like a plain, happy suburban couple. And they're like having a nice picnic by the waterside. And, they're like pulling sandwiches out of a basket. And they look up because they see, we sort of like see the camera from behind as this person approaches them. They see someone in like a pink kimono approaching. And Yuji is shocked because what we discover is that this is Shohei in disguise as like it's not like a full geisha outfit. It's more like, you remember the episode where Momo was like going back to the past and like she was wearing like the kimono with like the wooden platform slippers, whatever those are called?
Yeah.
You know the ones. It's that outfit, basically, with a wig.
Yes.
And like some lipstick on. And Shohei is like, guys, come on, like stop gawking at me. You're supposed to be like, looking around to see whether or not the Bara Fraud is gonna like come out and accost me and try to sell me something. Because I think that's what's happening, is that he is posing as a middle-aged woman so that Bara Fraud will try to sell him a crystal ball. Right?
Oh, yeah. No, I did not think of that, but you were definitely right. I just assumed they were all kind of there just scoping the place. But yeah, that definitely makes sense. It also puts the next one into perspective because Momo is dressed up as an old man street peddler also selling crystal balls.
Yeah, she's got like a bald cap on and like a fake mustache and like really fake glasses. And she is trying to sell children crystal balls, but Momo is not nearly the salesman that Bara Fraud is. So these children are super uninterested.
So he's kind of bored. And then Bullet Shoji, the warrior of love, arrives.
Yeah. So Goro rolls up, and he's basically wearing the outfit that Shoji wore in Farewell the Three Stooges, like with the big white trench coat and like the high-waisted pants on the motorcycle with the sunglasses. Except that
like
now,
it's not actually the same outfit, but it's very much an inspiration.
Did you see, by the way, Dave, that on his motorcycle, because it's not his Jetman motorcycle, it's just a motorcycle. It's just a motorcycle, but it has a decal over like what the actual brand of the motorcycle is, and it just says Scorpion.
I did not notice that. That's very, very cool.
Yeah. Oh, Goro also has frosted tips.
Yes. So I love many things about this. The first is that I am going to assume that Goro actually got frosted tips for this episode, which is fantastic. The other thing I love about this, I can only assume that they have Shohei dress up as the woman because Jori and Momo are both very young and pretty. And so it wouldn't work. So they just had to get Shohei, which like, he's a handsome dude, but he does not make an attractive lady.
Yeah. Whereas Yuji, even Yuji couldn't do it, honestly. Yuji would, like, be fine as, like, a young lady.
Yeah, like, they needed to get Shohei to do it. Now, what I don't quite understand is why Goro is like a rad motorcycle boy and Momo is dressed up as an old man, it would have made much more sense. My only conjecture is that they looked at the two costumes, like they worked backwards. They're like, well, Shohei has to be the old lady, and like Yuji and Juri, you guys can be like a young couple. There's only two costumes left, and Goro just looked at them and just claimed motorcycle guy.
Right. Because Goro,
as captain.
Man, Goro looks like he is not, maybe the actor, maybe the character looks like he is having so much fun in this episode.
Yeah, he's having a very, very good time. Like, he is super into his costume.
This is what I like about this episode, is that so often in this show, everyone is just wearing a jumpsuit and like they do good facial acting, but man, something about getting them out of those jumpsuits always makes for a great episode. Like every single time they're not in those jumpsuits, the quality of the episode goes up by at least 15%, especially when one of them is dressed up like Shohei in the best episode of Ohranger. Well, one of.
Yeah. Okay, so they go back to...
Oh, no, wait. We're not done with this scene yet. There's something I want to mention.
Please do.
Momo walks over to Goro, and she takes off her terrible bald cap, and she says, listen, Captain, this just isn't working. He's not showing up. And Goro is like, well, you need to keep trying. Like, loosely places the bald cap back on her head, but like her hair is totally fallen out, right? So now she just has like a bald cap on top of her visible hair that is down. He pushes up his mirrored sunglasses, shouts "rock on," and rides his motorcycle away. It is amazing.
So, listen, he did not claim that motorcycle costume because he didn't want it.
Yeah.
So we go back to the house, and the family, like, they're sitting down to eat dinner, and they're sort of like, man, we have just got like terrible luck. Ha ha ha.
And they're apologizing to the son.
Oh, that's right. And they're like, we've just got terrible luck. We must have like the worst luck in Japan. And then Bara Fraud just kind of walks in the door and says, you've actually got the worst luck in the whole world. And they get up to try and like yell at him. And he just pulls out another crystal ball and like kind of menaces them with it. And then they seem compelled to activate it again. Yeah,
he says like, your hearts are so weak, you're just going to do this anyway. Yeah. They do it and are immediately zapped with the hypno rays.
Yeah. Now, he is going to say later, although I'll mention it now because it makes sense, that this is like a new and improved version of the hypno ball. So presumably, that's kind of why that works. So we see Goro now standing by the side of the road with his motorcycle, and that same troop of like high school jogging girls jogs by. And then the last one stops and turns to Goro. And it turns out it is not, in fact, a high school girl. It is, in fact, Ricky.
Yes, Ricky is in on the costume party. I love this because Ricky never does anything with the team, right? He's always just off on his own. There's so much in this episode that I have been missing for this whole season, and it really makes me happy.
Yeah, it is really great. I do sort of wonder why they didn't just have Momo do that one.
Hey man, listen. They had a series of costumes. They figured out who fit in each one best, and they just ran with it. Maybe Momo's cardio wasn't that good, and they're like, listen, Ricky, you've got to be the one to go with the jogging girls. And also, he is a fair degree younger than her.
That's true. He's like 14 or something. So we go back to the family in their house, and the dad has been hypnotized to be like a kung fu action hero.
He has nunchucks.
And the little sister he does have nunchucks. The little sister is like a rock and roll girl, and then the mom is just...
like a fancy lady?
Like a fancy lady? Yeah. She's having Yutaka shine her shoes while she like does her nails or something. So Yutaka he's doing that. And then he notices that there's like a can of, like an aerosol can of something.
I think it's bug spray, like insecticide.
Yeah, maybe. So he walks up with the spray can, and he walks into the bathroom, and Bara Fraud is just chilling out in his human form, having a bath.
Still wearing his hat.
Yep, still wearing that hat. Yutaka sprays him with the bug spray, which doesn't do anything because he's a robot man.
Right, but I mean, okay, to be fair, he doesn't know that he's a robot man because he's never, I mean, he could probably guess, but he hasn't seen him in his robot form. So he just rolls in and is going to, like, burn out this man's eyes with a can of Raid. The way they do...
Okay, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Not knowing that dude is a robot, that's a pretty stone cold move on Yutaka's part.
The way they do this, the camera shot they do, is that they just sort of, like, put a clear lens... I mean, all camera lenses are clear, but they put a clear covering over the camera, and they do, like, a point of view shot where he walks in and, like, sprays the spray all over, like, the lens of the camera. It's, I don't know, it's just a fun trick.
Yeah. So okay. So it doesn't do anything. No. He just, like, Barafra just kind of gets up, or he grabs the spray can and crushes it and then tosses it over his shoulder. And he just kind of walks out. He's like, yeah, that's not going to work. Yutaka runs away. We get another shot of the family just, like, wrecking their own house, like knocking holes in the walls. There's a great shot of the dad just, like, come kicking and flying through a clearly styrofoam plank wall.
Mm-hmm.
But he's just sort of doing, the Bruce Lee scream maybe is the wrong word, but, like, that real pitched hi-ya that Bruce Lee does. The dad is just doing that, like, 24/7, just, like, over and over and over again as he is destroying his house with his bare hands.
Yeah, the son tries to stop them all, and they turn on him and, like, push him on the ground and start laughing at him and pointing. And, like, they kind of start moving toward him in a menacing way, and he just, like, gets up and runs out of the house. And he runs, like, across the street into the park and kind of, like, just falls over and starts crying. Because, I mean, he is a small boy, and this is a bad day.
Yeah, so he runs into Goro. Goro's like, hey, little buddy, like, what's wrong? Yutaka's like, well, my whole family is hypnotized, and now they're punching holes in the wall.
There is a moment where Goro has to introduce himself because he is still in costume.
Oh, I forgot about that. So Goro's sort of, like, holding this kid and, like, comforting him, and he sees in his, like, mind's eye, I guess, a future in which all the parents of Earth have been hypnotized to be children again, and, like, nobody is taking care of actual children, and, like, the world is falling apart.
Yeah.
So we go from there to the moon, and it's just, I think they just needed to remind us that Empress Multiwa and Kaiser Bull don't exist.
Yeah, because otherwise they are not
because
in
they're
this
not in this episode at all, aside from this scene. And they're like, man, bonds between human and children, like human children and their parents, not that big of a deal. And Empress Multiwa says, like, oh, Kaiser Bull don't. You're so great. And he's like, yes, I am. End of interlude.
Right. Back to the episode.
So we go back to the episode, and Bara Fraud walks into the house where, like, mom and dad and sister are all hypnotized. And he says, interesting to see that you're stupid as you ever were. Well, I'm going to go take a bath. Do. So he walks down the hallway, and then we get my second favorite, maybe my actual favorite moment in this episode, which is Yutaka is in the bath, and he turns around with, like, a washcloth on his head, and he just says, I think you've gotten overconfident, old man. And Bara Fraud says, like, what? And then we go back to the family, and they all take off their wigs, and it's the Rangers in disguise.
Yes, because, like, when Bara Fraud was walking in before, all three of their backs were turned to him because they were, like, like kicking the wall or playing the guitar or something. And so they turn around, and it's what is it? It's Goro and Yuji and
Juri, I think.
Juri.
So, like, fight's on, man. So they henshin, like, they sort of, like, they teleport out of the house, all of them, to a place where they can actually fight.
They also teleport out of these costumes and are now just in their jumpsuits again.
Yeah, sure, it's fine. So Bara Fraud has a flamethrower belt buckle, so that's very cool. And then Ricky runs up in his schoolgirl outfit, and then he's in He henshins, and now everybody's henshin and everybody's fighting. So there's a big fight, and then
The fight goes pretty quick. The fight at the beginning of the episode's a lot cooler. Like, they hit him real quick with King Victory Flash and the Ole Bazooka. He grows. They bring the blocker robos. They're like, oh, there's a crystal ball on his forehead. Break it. And then they do that, and then the fight is kind of over.
Yeah, like, he goes down, and then he goes giant.
Tackle Boy is there.
Well, the Tackle Boy is about to be there. Like, he goes giant, and they summon the blocker robos, and then they summon Tackle Boy. The thing that's kind of thrown me off about Tackle Boy is that his size seems to be incredibly variable.
Oh, sure. And also the distance between Okay, so you know how the way that it works is that he is a giant ball, or a giant wheel, and
he's a giant tire.
He is bowled, like, rolled towards the enemy, and then he jumps out of that, like, rolling action into a tackle, turns into a fireball, and hits him. That animation always makes it look like he is very far away from the monster when the thing starts, but then when the camera cuts back to how far away O-Blocker is from the monster, it's like one city block. There was no room for this to happen.
Yeah. So...
But it's worth it, because Tackle Boy is great.
Yeah, Tackle Boy rules. So then that's the end of Barafraud. Like, he just explodes. We go back to the family home, and the parents and the kids are in there, and they're all wearing, like, gray sweatsuits and, like, head protection gear. And the dad is telling them to be, like, really quiet and really careful. I think because the house is a wreck, and I think the idea is, like, literally any noise or disturbance is going to bring this house down around our ears.
Yes, and they are trying to, like, collect some things to get out of, like, to rescue from the house before it falls down.
Yeah.
And they do, and they put together, like, bindle sticks.
Yeah, and then the dad saves a bindle stick if you're not up on, like, hobo slang, like my brother apparently is.
I think everyone knows what a bindle stick is, Dave.
I knew what you meant by context clues, but if you had said, hey, what is a bindle stick? I would not have been able to answer you. A bindle stick is like a hobo's walking stick that's, like, over their shoulder, and all their stuff is tied up in a handkerchief that's hanging from the end of that stick.
Obviously. So, they all leave. As they are leaving, the dad tries to grab, like, one last thing, and that one last thing is, like, propping up a corner of the wall. And so when
I think it's a golf club.
And so when he grabs it, just, like, the whole house kind of collapses. They all run out. They barely escape being, like, horribly crushed to death.
Yeah. So then they are just wandering the streets, homeless?
Yeah, they're just walking down the street. And O-Rangers run into them and, like, hey, guys. And the family is all smiles. They're like, oh, hey, man, what's going on with you? And
what's up, Rangers? Good to see you. And the Rangers are like, man, so your house got destroyed. What are you going to do? And they say, well, I guess we'll just start over from square one. Ha, 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 ha. And they all laugh. And then the Rangers say, sounds good.
And then they laugh.
Bye.
And then the episode is over.
Yep, they just wave goodbye to this now destitute family.
It's a very strange end to this episode.
It's a really weird episode.
Like,
why doesn't the episode end with, like, the Rangers putting the last, like, finishing touches on a replacement house?
Yeah, see, this is
that
why...
also would have been fine.
This is why all good X-Men stories have a follow-up issue where they're rebuilding the mansion. Because otherwise, your house gets destroyed and then you just live in the woods.
Dude, okay, so that is the end of that episode, Matt, but it's not the end of our episode.
No, Dave, because now we need to determine where Barafraud lands in the Creature Royale.
Okay,
and I think he's pretty good.
First of all, I very, very much like his plan. I think he's got a really great idea. I like the fact that he is a martial artist with, like, heavy sandals. His look is kind of dumb, I'm gonna say.
Yeah, but he does have the cool crystal ball magic, and that's good. Not just like the crystal ball magic that hypnotizes people, but, like, the ones that he trapped people in the fight.
Yeah, so that is very cool. Like, as far as a final fight goes, it's not much of one. So I feel like mostly he's in on the strength of his like very cool plan.
Right. And also, like, you know, as we were saying last week, if the monster is a character, like with dialogue and a personality, he's going to get a lot higher on this list. And this guy definitely has that.
Yeah,
so,
that's huge for me.
So where are the other two machine beasts from the episodes with this family? We got Barra Fawcett and
Barra Fawcett is 56, and Barra Hungry is 63.
Okay.
So they're actually pretty close to each other.
Do we think that he goes in that same sort of zone or above? I don't think he goes below.
I do feel like he's in that same zone. Okay. Do remember that Barra Hungry was defeated by his love of festivals?
That's true.
And his inability to not dance. And that's amazing.
Yeah.
Barra Fawcett was like a shape-changing liquid robot?
Yeah, he was the guy from the movie, but we never saw the movie. So that was a little confusing, but it was good.
So I really dig both of those guys. Just above them are like Barakaka, Barahacker, and Karis the Zookeeper. And then we're up into the top 50 spaces with like Kame Tachi the Sickle Weasel, Bakuki the Illusionist, Light Armadillo, Bara Brain, Bara Darts.
Okay, I don't think he goes up there. I think
you're right.
I don't think he goes above Karis the Zookeeper.
No, I definitely don't think he does.
Now, Barra Hacker hid inside of computers, and then he jumped out, and then he did get startled by like a bad 3D rendering of O-Red. And so that was very good.
Yeah, well, okay. So actually, Matt, just below Barra Hacker and above Barra Fawcett is Barakaka, who is the like time travel themed illusionist that fought with Momo.
Oh, the one with like the Napoleon costume who was made to feel bad about not being a gentleman.
Yes, that is the one. And I think they're pretty similar.
Yeah, I mean,
in their way.
They both spend a lot of the episode in a human form. They both have a strong personality and a weird plan with like a supernatural like dimension shifting element to it. Although I guess this one wasn't so much dimension shifting.
Yeah, but it's the same sort of vibe. It is tough. I think I would probably put him above Barra Fawcett, but below Barakaka.
Yeah, and again, listen, a lot of that comes down to my aforementioned love of any monster with an extra dimension hanging out. I am comfortable with that. I am comfortable putting him at our new number 56, Barra Fraud. And that, Dave, that is going to do it for another episode of For Your Eyes Ohranger. Before we finish up here, I'd like to remind you all you can email the show at supersentaibrothers@gmail.com. If you want to get any updates on future episodes or check out the things that we're talking about on Twitter, we are at Super Sentai Bros. If you like the show, please remember, shining in the iTunes review section, there are 5 stars. Rate, review, subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever it is that you find the show. That is going to help other people find the show, and that is cool. The Super Sentai Brothers are a production of Retrograde Orbit Radio. If you would like to listen to any of the other great Retrograde Orbit Radio shows, you can do that all at retrogradeorbitradio.com or wherever you find your podcasts. Once again, we are the Super Sentai Brothers. I'm Matt.
I'm Dave.
And we'll see you next week for the greatest show on Earth.